Charles, great to see you.
Good morning.
So what do you know about Rex Tillerson, and why is he a good choice?
So I think he's an excellent choice for a number of reasons. I think he's well-reasoned, and I think he's also hopeful. Why? He's an internationalist. Exxon has programs all over the world, in just about every country of the world. And diplomacy ultimately boils down to trust, and I think he has proven over decades that he is a trusted entity all over the world. You know, it's very easy to imagine that anybody could do that job, but it's a job that requires being able to go one-on-one with somebody, look them in the eye, and get to an agreement on an outcome. And what has he done for several decades? He has been generating outcomes, not just pushing paper, not a Johnny-come-lately diplomat. He is somebody who has walked the walk. So net, I think he's going to be a great manager at the State Department. I think he knows these cultures, and I think it was actually a brilliant out-of-the-box choice.
And when you talk about out-of-the-box, you told our producer yesterday that he reminds you of, for instance, John Foster Dulles or Colin Powell, who are both Secretary of State. In what way?
Well, all of these successful secretaries of state come with obviously a confluence or a combination of a lot of capabilities. The thing about this particular candidate, and again, I don't know him personally, but looking at his record closely, he brings the combination of being able to go one-on-one with somebody in a way that is persuasive and convincing and has authority. I would say he's even closer in many ways to George Shultz, who came out of Bechtel. Powell was great managing people. I think one of the great things about this guy is he has the ability, Tillerson, to manage groups of people. And inside the State Department, that may be his biggest negotiating challenge of all. You've got to bring Foreign Service officers together with civil servants, together with political appointees. And he's proven to be a great manager, and I think that's got to be a plus.
And now let's fast forward to the confirmation proceedings. And some of the weaknesses perhaps might be looked at: his dealings with repressive regimes, especially in Africa, and of course his friendship award with Russian President Vladimir Putin. As Senator John McCain said yesterday, I'd never get an award from Vladimir Putin. He's a murderer and a thug. Your reaction?
You know, I think you have to take a longer view on this. This is an individual who for 2 decades has managed programs in Russia and the Caspian Sea. As Ronald Reagan would tell you, we have an awful lot in common with the Russian people. And at the end of the day, it's a very difficult culture to negotiate with. The Russians have a peculiar way of looking at the world. And I think he's very well suited to do that. You know, it doesn't bother me in the least. You're talking about a cabinet that is now likely to have sitting with him Generals Kelly, Mattis, Flynn. National security will not be an issue that he can't get good counsel.
And Robert, they are rejoicing in Russia with his nomination. Maybe it'll bring the 2 countries together. Robert, Charles, thank you. Yeah.
Sure. I would just say, remember, Ukraine and Syria may end up better negotiated with a better solution out of all this with him there than anybody else.
Well, it couldn't be worse than what we got. All right, Robert, Charles?
That's right.
Thank you,
yes, sir.
Thank you.
This is a wow. I bet you had no idea what you were getting into when you wrote this book in 2012.
Did you ever imagine?
No, I did not.
Tell us about Rex Tillerson.
Well, he's a Texan. He grew up in as the son of a modestly salaried administrator with the Boy Scouts of America, and then he went to the University of Texas and joined Exxon after that. He's been there for 40 years, so he's only worked at one corporation his whole life.
What drives him?
Exxon. That's where he's really made his life, and he rose to the top. It's a very closed corporation. All the top executives come from inside. He made his way through the external division that deals with foreign countries. Russia was one of his accounts. He also worked to develop oil in places like Yemen, so and all around the Arab world. So he's got a lot of contacts with foreign leaders. The last 10 years he's been running the place, and it's best understood as a kind of transnational sovereign of its own. It has its own political intelligence department.
I had an ambassador tell me they're in 200 countries. The State Department's in 150.
Exactly, and in some countries they're much more powerful than the State Department. I mean, there are countries in Africa where the authoritarian leader gets a check from Exxon for $500 million a year, and the State Department's spending $10 million a year. So that guy knows who.
What's he like as a leader? What's your takeaway from his leadership style? and what we may be able to take from that. And
he's strong, he's comfortable in his own skin. You know, Exxon is very systems-based, very research-based, very engineering-led. It's a very kind of empirical, data-driven organization. So, but it's also about negotiating with authoritarian leaders for deals where personalities matter. So
what kind of negotiator is he?
Well, you know, you hear these stories about theatrical, throwing the book across the room or walking out when the sheikh doesn't agree to your terms. I kind of take that at a discount because Exxon's systems are so overwhelming. They're very kind of formula-led. They know how to persuade different dictators that it's in their interest to do business with Exxon. And their main selling point over the years has always been, you know, we'll deliver on time and on budget, you'll get your check, and we're not here to mess with your politics.
Right.
We're here to be solid business partners.
Do you see anything with his relationship with Vladimir Putin that's outside the normal realm of what a CEO who wants to go in and make billions of dollars for his company would have?
Well, it's a very close relationship. It is a business relationship, so it doesn't necessarily translate to what he would say or think as a public leader, but he has spent in his career a lot of time with Putin and with Igor Sechin, who's one of Putin's most powerful allies and now runs Rosneft, the Russian oil.
So why has he spent so much time there?
Well, because Exxon, among international oil companies, figured out how to stay in Russia through all kinds of political weather when a lot of other companies failed.
How?
Initiative is joining me now via Skype, the energy venture founder of the Virgin Group, Sir Richard Branson. Sir Richard, good morning. Irony, you could say, brutal timing. Here you are launching Energy Ventures. How do you feel about that on a day when Rex Tillerson is nominated to be Secretary of State and Rick Perry's at the party?
Two things. First of all, if Rex Tillerson is indeed a climate denier, then it's all the more reason for business to step up to the plate. What I'm actually hopeful is that he isn't a climate denier. He said not so long ago that the risks of climate change are very serious and they do warrant action. And you know what we're hopeful for is that when he's no longer running ExxonMobil and he's actually in a position of great authority in America in government, that he will actually be able to do something about it. I mean, he obviously had a conflict of interest when he was at ExxonMobil, but he is at least somebody that knows that climate change is serious and warrants action. And we will obviously follow up with him and try to make sure that we can work with him in getting something done.
How much harder, though, is your fight against climate change if Donald Trump and his cabinet, in the end, are a group of people who question its validity to begin with?
Look, 190 countries at Paris signed up to and pledged that we would be carbon neutral by 2050. The world is working as one to get to carbon neutrality by 2050. We have to get to carbon neutrality by 2050. I can't believe that a majority of Donald Trump's cabinet denies what 99% of scientists could show them as fact, and that is that the more carbon we're putting into the Earth's atmosphere, the more damage we are ultimately going to do to this world. And I'm hopeful that Rex Tillerson, who knows more about this than anybody else in the cabinet, that he will stick by the comments he's made in the past and educate the rest of his cabinet into the dangers of climate change and help business like ourselves and others do something about it. I mean, the reason that we've launched the Breakthrough Energy Ventures is, myself, Bill Gates, Jack Ma, Kozler, Jeff Bezos, numerous business leaders. We know the world has a problem. We know we have to do something about it. We've got to come up with breakthrough technologies to make sure that we do get the world to carbon neutral.
So talk to me a little bit about Rex Tillerson, because he's getting a lot of positive feedback from people like Condoleezza Rice and James Baker and Bob Gates, and people that I've spoken to who've been part of the, of talking to him, say that he is very impressive. What do you think?
Well, I think their commendations were somewhat measured and cautious, and I personally know of no one who thinks this is a wise nomination. And Martha, we have some real problems. Now, I'm impressed with much of what the President-elect has already done. The people he's nominated, like Kelly and Mattis, for cabinet positions, taking on Lockheed Martin, taking the phone call with Taiwan, all good stuff. But there's this weird stumbling block where the President-elect will not ever criticize Vladimir Putin for anything. Ever. He just praises the guy. No matter the atrocities in Syria, no matter the threats, he won't criticize him. And now you have them floating the idea of Rex Tillerson, CEO of ExxonMobil, to be Secretary of State. It is a terrible idea. This is a guy who pals around with Putin, who got the Orden Druzhby, the Order of Friendship from Putin. The last thing we need at a time when Putin is trying to harm NATO, trying to subvert the EU, trying to subvert democracy, is a guy who thinks Putin's great.
Look, I understand what you're saying, but look back at the last day. Vladimir Putin has been so aggressive over the course of the last 8 years. While we have had, active diplomacy, John Kerry's been in there. We've been pointing the finger at him publicly in very strong ways, and yet doing nothing that actually undermined his movement across his area. Everybody understands. You really think that Rex Tillerson doesn't understand that this is a man who wants to spread Russian power back to the glory days?
Well, if he understands it, he sympathizes with Putin. And Putin, as John McCain said, is a thug and a murderer. Look, people in Washington, Martha, want realpolitik, cold logic. Putin has an emotional core of visceral hatred of the United States, blames us for the collapse of the Soviet Union, blames us unjustly for all of Russia's woes. He wants to hurt us even if it hurts Russia. Now, in the short term, he wants sanctions lifted, because we did put more sanctions on in the wake of Crimea and Ukraine, and they are hurting the Russian economy. We didn't do enough. Obama certainly is not a model of effectiveness, but we did something. Putin wants the sanctions lifted. He wants NATO destroyed, Europe divided. He wants the empire of the czars in the long term restored territorially,
I understand
and he wants the United States humiliated.